the number one reason people don't get paid on time is they don't invoice on time. And it's not.
You're listening to the Accounting Disruptors Podcast, powered by the WIS Lab. I'm Paul Peterson, CEO of WIS. This show is about the people transforming accounting, the founders building the technology, and discovering what becomes possible with deployed intelligence and automation. Today, I'm joined by Ali Hussain from Tabs. Tabs is at the forefront of disrupting an area that accounting and finance teams have struggled through for years, the revenue to cash cycle. I'm excited to learn from Ali how Tabs is fixing this long-term problem and how Ali envisions the future of accounting and finance. All right, so I'm really excited to be here today with you, Ali. I was thinking a lot about what we could talk about. There's tons of stuff that is going on right now in the world of accounting and finance. But what I really was most curious to hear from you is, how you started Tabs, what you saw as the problem that you're looking to solve, and then how has that been going so far for you? And it seems like over the past let's call it 8 months, things have really changed.
Yeah. I would love to. And first of all, Paul, thanks for having me. I'm always amazed by both, obviously, the firm you've created, but also just the culture you create of creating a brand, being tech forward, AI forward, the best LinkedIn game by far.
I appreciate that.
I always thought I was fast to respond.
No, you're still better than me. But
and it's funny because I know it's you because you have that passion and I have it too. But people are like, well, is that a bot? Is that and it's no.
Yeah.
It's any time if someone.
Well, that's what I love. You're so passionate about this and what you're doing, and we need you.
100%. Vice versa. We need we can't do it if we don't have partners who are credible in the market and can speak kind of the core accounting and finance side. But to answer your question, Tabs was founded about 2.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. I myself, I've been an operator for over a decade, had basically built a company that started on QuickBooks. We moved it to NetSuite.
Okay.
And this was pre-Oracle's acquisition. So I had become a believer of a lot of, I think a lot of folks bought into this belief that we're moving from on-prem to cloud.
Sure.
And there's going to be this ability to buy a suite type solution from a mid-market ERP player.
Yep.
And it's going to be amazing. And in that, many things were great. I mean, obviously for a lot of us that moved from on-prem to cloud, having a cloud-based ERP or GL was phenomenal. But one of the things I learned when I adopted that approach in 2015 to the AI era was there are certain parts of finance that are just too specialized or complex.
Yep.
And an everything out of the box solution just doesn't work well for that.
That's really well said.
And so within that, I came to believe that around the GL, there's 3 key data primitives: vendor, employee, and customer. And we started to see, even before AI, companies like Bill.com or Gusto and Rippling or ADP and Ramp and everything started to show as a user of NetSuite that I could defer to a subledger like a Ramp or a Rippling. And it just worked much better than an out-of-the-box everything suite. And so even before I started Tabs, I started to defer 2 areas of my financial operations to really modern platforms that started to make my life much easier. I was saving time. I could do more application. I could deal with more complexity. I could administer payroll internationally. I could consolidate a lot more controls around my AP. And so in 2021, as I was leaving my last company and thinking about what I wanted to do next, I was highly caught up with what I believed was the forgotten part of the subledger, which was everything tied to customer.
Yep.
And so I knew I wanted to go build a company bigger, better, faster. And I was highly fixated on why there was no equivalent of what I saw in AP and spend and with payroll and benefits on the revenue side, which I would consider the customer.
It is fascinating when I think about it. Yeah. Like Bill.com, all these expense kind of,
100%. There's probably over a dozen unicorns in AP and spend.
Yep.
There's a dozen plus unicorns in payroll and benefits. But if I went to someone like you who knows the domain better than anyone, it would be hard to even come up with 1 or 2 viable alternatives on the revenue side. And so to answer your question, kind of the second part of your question. So that was the conviction point that, hey, there's got to be something
Yeah.
here. The question I had though was, why has it been so difficult to crack? Because there's some amazing entrepreneurs out there. There's some amazing companies that are incredibly well capitalized. Why haven't they not cracked it?
You know what I love about that? That was one of the questions I was going to have for
Yeah.
you. So I love that you're going
100%.
into that, because I'm like, why wasn't this tackled, at some point in time? And is it extremely difficult? Was that kind of the moat that like prevented people from, doing this?
Yeah, and so it comes back to the data.
Yeah.
If you ultimately think about the data primitive of AP and spend, it ties back to a vendor relationship.
Okay.
And payroll and benefits, like employees, like when did they start? What's their comp? What's their benefit package? A lot of us are going through enrollment periods right now, but it's not like hyper complex and it's not constantly shifting in any given point of time.
Okay.
But when you think about revenue, the customer relationship, it's highly variable. Most companies have very different products they sell, pricing, discounting, key terms, special terms, milestones, usage.
Yeah, much more dynamic.
100%.
Yeah.
And so when you think about the problem pre-AI, it was just impossible to crack. Like
makes
that
sense.
level of data ingest and context reasoning without an LLM and other types of ML models, like you just wouldn't be able to do until 2022. And so your only alternative was you build a bunch of custom services work to your CRM or your commercial source of truth, or you just put a bunch of bodies on the problem, because an accountant or a human would be the only one who would be able to ingest the legalese on that order form or contract or service agreement and then get to an invoice or rev rec. And so in 2022, we saw GPT launch, and I sat there with my founding team and I'm like, now's the time to go build a revenue company.
Smart.
Like it's a big market.
Yeah.
There's going to be a winner.
Huge market.
We need to go be maniacal about how we tackle this problem and be very forward looking. And so in 2023, we started the company. We were hyper focused on how do we solve the data problem first. Like there's some cool downstream AI party tricks, but the foundational problem is each contract's different, each order form pricing.
Right.
How do we actually use AI to ingest that context?
Yes. Yeah.
And if we can do that right, that's going to be the foundation to build more AI native software, but also fuel the context that an agent would need in the future that otherwise today requires huge human capital to go play CSI, what happened with
Absolutely.
that contract.
Get all that and make sure it's verifiable and
100%.
accurate to use.
Exactly. Spot on. And so the last part of your question is what's changed now?
Yeah.
We're just seeing a far more forward-looking finance persona. And so in 2023, we were fortunate, we've raised about $100 million. So it's not been the capital piece here. It's been more, you just have to build a lot of stuff. Revenue is a very intimate part of the finance stack. 2024 is when we came to market about 18 months ago. I'd say in the first 6 months, we had success, but it was mostly early adopters who were comfortable using AI in the finance stack. But out of every 5 or every 3 conversations, we would get objections. Hey, like, why would I trust putting my contracts into tabs and letting an LLM read it? Or how can I trust that this is going to sync bidirectionally with my NetSuite or my QuickBooks? And I would say fast forward to this year, we've seen a complete shift. Like unless you have a very unique HIPAA or government compliance security need, the forward-looking behavioral shift amongst the finance community has been much faster than I thought. And my hypothesis is most finance teams are telling the rest of their orgs to do more with less, and they want to be good stewards. So if they're telling their engineering teams or their ops teams or their sales teams to use AI, there's now a higher mandate that they must be good stewards in the org. But the second one is like, I genuinely think finance leaders also just want to do a lot more and are thinking about areas they can become more efficient.
Right.
Even in, many of these, our customers are the fastest growing and well capitalized in the world. And we have others who are looking for efficiencies. So it's not just like a resourcing constraint. I think they genuinely are looking to become and repurpose a lot of their capital to more strategic initiatives and feel like AI can be a really good use case to drive more automation.
I love that. And it's it works on a couple of trends, like you said, right? One is just that I think we're all forced to look at how do we become more efficient, just because the accounting supply has really decreased significantly over the past few years, especially since COVID.
100%.
And so like you're forced to really look around and say, all right, how are we going to do things with less people, right? And then the second thing, like you talked about, there is sort of this now, how can I be a better CFO? How can I be a better controller? How do I go from less of a historian into more of a value-added, predictor of what's to come, and being more a part of the, creation of value, even from a revenue perspective. Like if they could spot trends, if they could spot like, hey, here's what we're seeing happening in a real time, as opposed to, here's what we got from a month ago. So I think that there's been a shift in even how someone wants to add value. And then what'll be interesting to see in the middle market, which I'm really hoping happens soon, is where there is a better relationship between the CEO, sales, and CFO, right? And that it's one conversation.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I don't like, we talked about like with tabs, and it's the way I was trying to think about like, how could we break this down? You kind of helped me where there's the early adopters, right? And there are those, maybe they're newly formed companies, or they're not as established, because we can kind of break this into two. We could talk about the more established companies, but maybe with the ones that are the early adopters, like how are they looking at building out the future of their accounting and finance department?
There's a few things, the early adopters, and we can break it out into more the ones that are growing from scratch versus the ones that are established.
Okay.
The ones growing from scratch, I think, have a unique opportunity where they have no prior precedent on how to build things out. And so with the ones that are growing fast and are starting from scratch, we're seeing them, I think there's a couple themes. One is generally full-time, they are hiring a lot less full-time finance professionals. And so what used to be a threshold of maybe 10 to 50 million in revenue before they bring on their initial team, now they're waiting to even 100 million plus. Now, that doesn't mean it's just AI. I've seen an added focus on leveraging their client advisory services or their outsourced
totally.
firm.
And we're seeing that too.
100%. And so I think that's actually a good thing, that they're realizing they can rely on you all or another firm, especially for things in accounting in areas that there's no reason to resource a team. And to your point, those folks don't even exist anymore.
They really don't.
Even the cost has become out of control. But like bringing on a full-time billing person 2 years out of EY for $55K, forget about it. They're like
this is
2 to 3 times the cost.
Exactly.
And if they were to so choose, they're not going to be sending out collections notices and filling out W-9s.
It's I'm happy you said that, because it also has to be like an awakening in a way. It's funny because when somebody starts like they want to replace X, Y, or Z, and then we'll tell them, well, the cost of what it is today, it's almost like, no way.
No way, exactly. And so I think the number one thing we're seeing is people are deferring bringing on full-time headcount, and even not even thinking about AI yet. They're just looking at firms to get them to much deeper in their journey and deepening that relationship beyond just a month-end close or something more fundamental. So that's trend number one. Number two is, funny enough, some of them are staying on QuickBooks much longer.
It's amazing.
And so I'm with some of the companies I'm with, they're saying, look, I can stay on QuickBooks to a public company.
Right.
It's really the subledgers. Like, unless I have a really unique multi-entity reason to go off, if something like a Ramp or a Zip can handle my AP and spend for much longer, and now I have a tabs that can automate, and I don't need to build out really bespoke order and contract objects into my ERP, and tabs' AI can handle that and drive a lot more automation around Dunning and RevRec to 606. I don't need to move over to a NetSuite ARM or some type of revenue product in Sage or Workday for much longer. And so that's been the other really interesting trend.
It's very interesting.
People are designing these AI stacks that are really thoughtful. But it's not 10 different tools. Like it's like 3 or 4 mix of the old. That's pretty low cost, but making investments in the area, if payroll operations are really advanced, maybe you have to go to a really advanced set, but like you can drive RevRec and tabs and drive really good AP and procurement, even on something like Ramp and Bill now.
Yeah.
And so I'd say that's the second trend. So those are a couple things I'm observing.
I
To
love
the
that.
point on the more mature companies,
Yeah.
I think one thing we're unique with is we're not a all or nothing type solution. Like we can come into someone who may have very robust build outs or controls in their Sage or NetSuite. And we can say, look, like, let's just start to unbundle. You may want to in the next year or two go to an AI native GL or ERP, but let's bring AI to a part of the problem that is most costly to you. So one thing you'll appreciate is most companies at about 100 million plus in revenue have about 15 to 20 finance professionals, at least the established ones. In that, 70% of their headcount is accounting.
Unbelievable.
So it's like more accounting heavy.
Yeah.
If you actually look at most FP&A or strategic finance or tax, they're quite lean relative to accounting.
Very skinny.
And so within accounting, if that's 70%, more than half of them in accounting, and you may know this, you may not. Do you know what 2 jobs they're doing? Like what most of the composure
No, I can't
is?
wait to hear this.
So it's billing and collections, which benchmarks 4-to-1 to AP and spend, and revenue accounting, meaning once you start to go through things like audit and compliance, the number of revenue accountants you have to start adding to drive that is really high.
Yeah.
And so what I think the most established companies are seeing is like, look, there's some cool tools out there, but if I'm actually going to do some ROI against not my prior software spend, if you think about it like that, I think you're thinking about it the wrong way.
Yeah, same.
It's more, where do I think I'm going to have to add more human capital to sustain this?
Yes.
And that's where, though revenue has been the least sexy and least invested in relative to AP and spend and payroll and benefits in the GL, when you actually look at where the bodies are buried, and you need to think about how do I use AI to help augment that. And it may not mean I'm going to get rid of my team, and maybe I just want that same team to sustain me as I continue to grow 30% each year.
It makes a lot of sense.
And that becomes a really good tailwind for something like that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is great too, because I think there, again, needs to be conversations. We call it like, there's so much blocking and tackling, as we refer to it. It's just like, with the established companies, it's, we're starting to really use a term to get people's attention. It's like slop.
Yeah.
It's just like, you're just... and like you were talking about is the ingestion of data, is how you're manipulating that data. And that's what a lot of the payroll is doing, right? And then when you think about what is the most important aspect to any company, right, is getting from order to cash.
100%. It's the lifeblood of the business.
Yeah. And so we throw a lot of people at it, but it really hasn't, like you said, and we can get into that a little bit, is like some of the experiences you guys have had with like, sharing with us like a great example of going into a company that was that way, a lot of slop, a lot of the blocking and tackling. Tabs comes in, and like, what has it done to transform, and reduce the number of days to collection? Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Two tidbits. One is, you'll get a kick out of this. The number one reason people don't get paid on time is they don't invoice on time. And it's not, there's no, so like everyone's like, oh, AI, we're gonna have agents who are gonna be calling folks and different types of payments and all that you have to do, and it's cool.
Yeah.
But the best application of AI is just making sure that when a firm closes a deal, what happens in most, or a company closes a deal, what happens in most orgs is like a lot of those deals get done end of month, end of quarter.
Yeah.
It gets done in sales. The data doesn't even move to accounting or finance for days. Even when it hits accounting and finance, they have to close their books. They have a board meeting.
Right.
It just gets delayed. And on a net 30, if you don't have your house in order, the AP department to your customer is not the buyer of your product. They're just looking at who has their house in order.
Right.
And if you send your invoice 16 days late, no one's going to pay you in 14 days. They're going to reset the clock. And so the number one metric for us is, how do we just make sure that when you come onto tabs, that data is cleaned up, so that the minute a deal is closed won, our system takes it. Yeah. Sometimes we get slapped on the wrist. You invoice me too fast. So I say, look, like if you really want, send it out within 24 hours. But if you wait 14 days and it's, then on top of that, it's the wrong invoice or it's inaccurate.
Right.
That's what takes up AP timelines or DSOs to 50, 60
sure.
days. There's no magic there. It's just common sense.
Yeah, and so just to share, you're gonna like this story.
Yeah.
I have to do it.
Yeah.
So it's like, so a lot of professional service firms, I'm sure, right? Like the billing has always been like almost a responsibility of the partner, right? And so when you think about even the amount of time and hours that are just at like just not a valuable rate is spent like getting billing runs in terms of like an accumulation of all these times. So like, piles of information, you got to go through there, sort there, capture, all right, what should be billed, what shouldn't be billed,
100%.
right? And what you talked about as a funny thing is a lot of times the reason we're not getting paid is they never got the invoice, right?
100%.
Right? And it's like crazy that our people call and be like, hey, I'm just checking in on, we never got an invoice, So we had this one, like we've had people that they were afraid to bill, right? So we had this one person who, things started showing up, like almost every relationship on his run started showing up in the over 90-day column, right? So they started like calling the clients, client after client's like, no, never got an invoice. Well, what happened was he didn't want to bill anyone because he was so afraid of like having the calls.
Yeah.
Like if they call, like, why'd you bill me something?
Yeah.
He just kept them in the drawer.
That's insane. It's insane.
So it's like, but this is like what you're beholden to in a
100%.
way, like,
How do you-
right? Yeah, your most important thing in running the business, your revenue cycle, your cash, but you were so dependent upon individuals. It's like the other piece that you're talking about is being able to institutionalize this intelligence.
100%.
Yeah.
To institutionalize it and get to the point where AR and AP can hopefully resolve most matters. And
Right.
look, sometimes it has to be more direct or aggressive, but the idea is not to hurt the relationship.
Yeah.
And I think the ideal end state is that a partner who manages the relationship doesn't need to go to their person to resolve an invoice. But that needs to be the absolute last part of it.
Yep.
But I see it all the time. Like when I first started the company, or one of the law firms we worked with, like their AP department, like inherently, I'm kind of an introvert. A lot of accountants are introverts.
Oh, yeah.
They don't even want to send a direct email. And so like I had just never gotten an invoice from one of my law firms. And finally I get an invoice on a Friday, and this invoice was like 100 days overdue. And I didn't know. I thought they were emailing it to my finance or AP department.
Yeah.
They were just emailing me directly because that's what the partner must have put in. And it's the billing team for this law firm in Central Ohio or wherever they are. And all they write is "Happy Friday, see attached." And like, if I don't know, like my mailbox is like relatively good, but if I see a "Happy Friday, see attached," I'm just assuming someone paid this.
Yeah.
No clarity on what the invoice is for.
Yep.
How it's overdue. Am I the right person? And when you think about AI and some of the applications we use, whether it's to check one of our emails or draft something, it's actually an incredibly powerful tool to enable both people and technology with things that they just may not have the skill set for.
That's the truth.
But
Yes.
if we can do our job right, ideally it never even has to come to the relationship level.
Yeah.
Because to your point, like you're all like time is too valuable,
Yep.
but also like last thing you want to go is to go back to your counterpoint and escalate something that didn't have to be.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is just movement too. Like the world is changing, where it's like pricing is going to be changing. Like things are definitely being disrupted, and I think there's just going to be the need to have more insight into the, let's call it, like, from pricing is going to be moving more from like fixed prices, more dynamic pricing.
100%.
Have you seen some of the
Massive.
Yeah,
It's already
yeah.
happening. I
Okay.
think there's two parts. So one is, one of the reasons why orgs are slow to adopt pricing is finance says no. And finance doesn't say no, or accounting doesn't say no because it's bad margins or bad revenue. It's just they don't have the systems to administer that pricing. They say,
100%.
look, we already built out a price book in our billing system or our ERP or our CRM. And if you even change the product or the type, it will take us 4 months to re-implement.
That's
and
right.
so part of our job is to give finance full flexibility. You should still make sure it's a good product and it's profitable or whatever you're solving for from a deal desk perspective. But from an actual administration standpoint, you should never say no to good business. The second, to your point, we are now seeing almost 60% of our customers, regardless of industry, adopt to some type of usage type pricing.
Okay.
And we think this is the future.
Yeah.
And it's not just like the Snowflakes and the AWSs of the world. Even marketing firms and others are moving to some form of consumption.
Yeah.
And it's great business because, one, it's not just pure risk-based consumption. Most of these companies have minimums or tiers or something to guarantee. But there's so much economic value in the upside that folks don't bill for today or create products around.
Yeah.
And like if people are using it more or are trying to drive to more value-driven services, knowing that you can just provide them that service without worrying about reselling it to them.
That.
And in that month, if they're going through a fundraise or an audit or others, and they want to tap into more of those resources, you don't need to like manually track all of that. Your usage inputs can come in a really intelligent system like Tabs that can kind of deterministically realize that, hey, there were these elements in a contract that we can now bill, and it's contracted. It's not like there's no surprises.
That's what I was going to say. It's not like
do that automatically.
Right.
And so we're already like, one thing that you said that I really like is like, we are just ripping the Band-Aid. Revenue is going to be more complicated.
Yes.
AI, though, is a great enabler. Not only it's going to change the way these products are sold, but also tools like Tabs can help administer that. And it's not just billing. No one knows yet, in my view, how to fully, from a 606 standpoint, create auditable usage. Like,
that's right.
Folks are still auditing the contract and the order form. That's fine. But at some point, we're all going to wake up and say, look, we also have to audit usage. And like, how do we actually determine this performance? And like, so a lot of the design decisions we're making is for a world where audit will go much beyond the contract and the MSA or the order form to other elements to do this in ways that we don't understand.
Yeah. So how could, like, when we walk through a little bit, because there's, a lot of listeners are going to be the established companies where it's like, help me, I've been on this ERP and it was supposed to cure all my problems, but it's created so much in the way of like outside the system into Excel, so much in the way of like massive amounts of data moving out of the system into the system, into say Excel, like as the key artifact, let's say, right? And then all the manipulation occurs there. So like what I keep thinking about is, how do we start to bring relief and solutions to them in a way where it's like, how does Tabs kind of hold their hands through it?
Yeah,
right.
100%.
Yeah.
So I think there's a few things. One is just whether you realize it or not, you've probably already done it in AP and spend, meaning you built this like pretty clunky everything suite of ERP a decade ago or 5 years ago. The number of you who have now shifted off of that for AP and spend even before AI is drastic. There's a stat, like our internal data kind of shows that on most of the mid-market ERPs, pre-COVID, it was like 70 to 80% of you used AP and procurement off your ERP.
Yeah.
That's now sub 30%. So you've already moved to a Coupa or a Bill or a Zip or a Navan in some part of your stack. And so you've already started to build that muscle. And I'm sure your net positive has been great because like very few of you have gone back and said, hey,
that's
I really
right.
need
They haven't gotten off it.
Exactly. And so the beauty of something like Tabs is we're not coming and telling you to rip everything out. Like we're saying, why don't you now look back on the billing and RevRec side and think about, and for many of you, you may be ready to move all of that to something like Tabs. We typically say, look, if you have really deep build out in your NetSuite ARM or something like that, let's at least show you the power of this in billing. It's mostly not I have to redo my CRM or anything. That what you've already established, because we're AI native, we're not telling you to recreate your sales process or your pre-sale process. We're just going to connect in our first-party APIs, whether it's directly into your CRM like Salesforce or into your DocuSign or your Ironclad or your or Conga. And your existing infrastructure we're not going to rip out. And we'll just start reading that data and can immediately start running billing. And everything is bidirectional back to your GL. And so we serve 80% of the mid-market GL vendors. And so very likely we already have a direct connect. So the actual final data is going to mirror what you were doing in your prior processes.
Got it.
And so I think it's one of the best ways to both introduce AI
Yeah, I
into
like
your
that.
stack,
Yeah,
but also solve your most laborious workflow.
totally.
But
Yeah,
we're
so
not saying blow everything up. And so that's
I think that's a real salient point.
Yeah.
Because I think there is a lot of fear right now, and again, like what we're going to have to do, even at WIS, is just continue to think about how we're educating and helping our clients through this, and for them to get a sense of, it's not like you just said, like we're just not going to rip something out and like shove something. It's more of like really looking more surgically at how to go about doing this,
100%.
but all of these enhancements are going to improve dramatically the way in which they're going to start to be able to reduce the amount of time and effort.
100%.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's nice about us is we're not telling you then go buy 4 other things. Like you don't need to go buy middleware to tie these systems together. You don't need to go find a new tax provider. Like we're meeting you where the puck is now. If you're on Avalara and you love it, keep using Avalara.
That's
Log
great.
into Avalara in tabs and you'll have continuity from a tax standpoint. Any of your prior invoices, we're reading that data. We're not going to just go send that invoice again from tabs and create, like everything is very thoughtfully thought through.
Yeah.
And to your point, as much of us, I think the well-capitalized AI natives, we're not just building product for AI. We're building product for onboarding.
Yeah.
We're building product for business continuity. We're building product for data consistency. We're building products that help start to gracefully power down your prior processes and power up tabs because we want to be with you for the next decade.
Right.
And so the best advice I can give is when you do want to transition to something like tabs, don't do it 15 days before your renewals due with, I don't know, Maxio or like your billing platform or your ERP. Start to create a strategy at least 3 months in advance, if not 6.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure that it makes sense from an economic standpoint, but you can do this in a way where you're gracefully powering down and powering up.
That's great.
And starting to introduce AI into your stack.
And will you help them sort of see that vision?
100%.
Okay. That's
100%.
great too.
And we are all in, look, like
so there's like a consultative approach to it.
100%.
Okay.
We have all we're all fellow based here in the Northeast, but we're fully in person, fully US based staff.
Yep.
The thing about AI, the best companies, they have as much as their AI and product, their human capital, their CX team, their implementation team. Like most of our team is ex-accountants on the implementation side. They're all based in New York. You're not outsourcing anything offshore or to a third party. But the thing about whether it's AI or not AI, the most terrible experience is your support and success. Like, to get anyone from your ERP system or some of our legacy competitors, like it's a Zendesk ticket that goes on a bus, via train, via plane, somewhere offshore. It takes like 7 days to get a simple answer. We're with you. Like you'll get a response within minutes if you email us. You have a dedicated CX or support person with you in Teams and Slack.
Yep.
Because things in finance go wrong all the time.
That's right.
And I think most operators are very patient. They just need to make sure they get clarity very quickly.
Yes.
Whether it's an enablement issue or frankly a product issue, and we'll resolve it right away.
I love that. And that's so, I think, important for a lot of listeners to know that they'll have that.
Yeah.
You know, because unfortunately, a lot of them are already underwater.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, I think a lot of times it's almost like when they want to do something new,
Yeah.
they look at it as like, well, I already have 20 things I got to get done. How am I going to fit that in?
100%.
Yeah.
And that's why we're spending so much time, Paul, with your firm is like, we want, they are ultimately at the company, the decision maker and the user or the ultimate party, but like to the degree your partner like WIS or like TAP, like we want to be a 3-way partnership because a lot of the work we do with our clients is actually folks at your firm and others who are handling it day to day post implementation. And they're like the end firm just gets to oversee everything and keep a much leaner internal team.
We love that. And that's exactly how we're looking at the world. It's like you're looking at the world. I think, which I you know, it's really interesting to me, which is like an aha moment when I saw you out in San Francisco back at the Real event in September. And you're kind of making your way through the audience and the enthusiasm that the like people in accounting and finance have. I mean, you carry with you almost like a rock star status, which is really right. It's really. And I told that story when I came back. I'm like, there's a movement.
Yeah.
I mean, people are like, that's an incredible thing. Our industry has been so static for so long, and a lot of the tools, just like you said, unfortunately, I think the tools had intent as to how they were going to be all-in-one solutions, but they really created, you needed more people, not less, to run the systems, And then you have to have like an expert that's like, do you have an expert in this system and an expert in this system?
Yeah.
And a lot of them don't even talk to one another, and then you had to pull the data into somewhere. But I just thought it was really interesting to see how excited people are.
100%. I think it's the most exciting time in all things finance and ERP than maybe ever in history, because I feel like in finance, a lot of us felt forgotten for some time. All this cool stuff was happening in coding and in sales and in marketing and all these other functions. And I think two things have happened in the last year that are exciting. One is the venture capitalists have kind of woken up and been like, wait a minute, like broad ERP and finance spend is much higher, even in a software standpoint. Like I think the stat I saw was in the US alone, about $150 billion are spent on technology in finance.
Incredible.
The problem is like these companies haven't had to evolve for over a decade because they get a free tax because like there's no competition.
That's it.
And then on top of that, most of them have been so blocked by just getting on-prem systems to cloud. So most of their innovation has gone into a bunch of services work. And I think what they have not done right is two things. One is they have focused so much on monetizing services. They have gotten so addicted to that where they haven't had to innovate from a product standpoint. Because that's a revenue center. The second is there's no collaboration between those players. And so to your point, you saw that like, I'm grateful to the Rilla team and vice versa. Like we were, as another vendor in this space, invited to an event because we're collaborating. Like if Tabs wins, Rillit wins. If Rillit wins, Tabs wins.
That's
and
right.
like our teams work together. So a lot of things otherwise a client or a firm would have to quarterback between Sage and Salesforce or anything like that. Like we have a client that has a go live this morning, large company, pre-IPO, and through the weekend behind the scenes, like my product leader on Rillit and Rillit's integration leader on Tabs are like working together.
That's
and
great.
So not only are we doing a lot of things publicly, like behind the scenes, you have incredible technical talent that is figuring out things. Because if we can nail it for this client on Monday, that actually creates product that the next 100 clients we have in pipeline together can benefit from. And so it's not you figure it out and you have a third party do it one off for the two vendors. The amount of technological innovation, which I think is best, it's just exciting to be an accountant who's going to get to benefit from these tools, and the consumer wins for the first time.
It's so true. I mean, and it's I love how you put that, because that is exactly what has happened, right? It has been less about how do we innovate and more about like how do we just keep you running the same kind of way. We'll just give you some extra services along the way, but like nothing really changed. And it's 100%. Like the fascinating thing for me is so in the public accounting world, especially, they're really, other than like we talked about a little bit, like you said, going to the cloud. It was like a big innovation, right? Other than that, there has not been an advancement 100%. Of tools. And so, but the complexities have increased substantially. I mean, from when I started to now, just like tenfold increase in complexity, and the demands that are put on, the accounting and finance department today with all of the data and trying to, because it's also becoming, when you think about it, a company that can get out of the gate and have more intelligence and be able to be more predictive and more spotting things quicker in terms of, hey, I'm spotting when a customer buys X, they normally are also wanting Y, and that gets to a company quicker than another, like you start to really have a competitive advantage.
100%.
And a lot of times, like everybody just looks at like the accounting function as just get me what I need from like, how did we do last month?
So thank us. 100%.
How do you how do you see tabs like keeping this essence of what you have as you grow?
Yeah.
How do you keep, because like you just said, you guys have an unbelievably responsive team. How do you keep that going? Because one of the things I think, that I look back in the day and I remember when I think was it NetLedger that became NetSuite or something like that?
Yeah.
They were it was like there was a lot of enthusiasm around that, right? But as things get bigger and get more, they sort of lose this.
Yeah.
How do you see that playing out?
I think a few things. One is we must be incredibly demand focused and tied closely to solving the problems the customer has. And I think the classic problem with a lot of Silicon Valley companies and venture-backed companies is they get that early win, but they take that for granted.
I see.
And then they go and believe that they know better where to focus their R&D and their innovation, and they continue to get more and more disconnected from the customer. And then when the customer needs something, it's like, oh, either the customer is wrong or let's give them something quicker or services oriented to just duct tape it.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I've been impressed with everyone who is right now winning in the finance stack is they are the most maniacally customer focused. No one is calling themselves a founder visionary. They're calling them an AI forward founder who wants to work and build a lot of demand and
really
be highly
cool.
Commercially focused. And that's why, like, you and I are all over LinkedIn. That's why I've been on the road every week over the last 6 weeks. And will be outside of maybe Thanksgiving. And even on Thanksgiving, on Monday, we're with an accounting firm in I think it's Philadelphia, because we're sitting with the customer and we're understanding where most of the problems still sit in finance, and then figuring out how AI can do magical things against that. And so to answer your question, I think the big litmus test for us is like, how do we continue to be very deep with the customer, solve for their problems. And then in that, when customers get really comfortable with a product, the amount of ideation that comes in and says, look, like if you could do Cash App for me, it would be so much better than relying on my GL to do it. Or if you can solve for how to handle W-9s and POs, because there's so much back and forth, or that, then we can use this magical tool, which is AI, and reimagine the category. But the minute we go and say, no, we're going to go and disappear and just build agents because we understand agents better than accountants do, we have lost.
I absolutely love that. And and I'll tell you why, right? So the mission since I started and what we've had really at WIS was always, why does accounting have to be such a crappy place to work? Right? Like it's like as simple as that. And that has been something that we've been really looking opportunistically to solve for. Right. And so like you could do that through, you build a better environment, you better build a better people culture, right? Like start to just think more in terms of the humanistic sides, right? Of how can we just have less of a hierarchy and all these types of things, right? Like deconstructing in a way, like the traditional accounting firm, right? And so that was kind of like the first movement, right? Took a long time. But now, like, we still haven't been able to address the quality of the work, right? In terms of the amount of effort it takes to produce something and the amount that you're always having to make decisions as to what's my priority is. I'm just always drowning when I get more towards my deadlines, where I feel personally some of the worst days in our, as you kind of grow and you're more on the front line of a customer is when you let a customer down. Right. Those are like your worst days.
100%.
And a lot of that was because it wasn't intent, right? It was you couldn't get enough of the data to in a timely amount of time, so you're rushed, right? Or you have so much going on and you're being hit from so many different places that something slips through the cracks, right? And that's inevitable when you're dealing with all of the work that we've had to, plus the additional complexities, but no real increase in innovation, right? So what I love what you guys are doing, and even as you just gave, how you see tabs moving forward and being hyper about the client, that's what's needed for us to start to create space for them, you know, and to really, for them to start to see that there are better ways of doing things and that there are people focused on solving that for them, you know? So I love that. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Is there anything else, like, before we wrap, that you'd like to share? Anything I should have asked you that I didn't?
I think it's just one of those things where in the next couple of years, the best finance professionals, I do believe in this moment, will be the ones who more lean in.
Yeah.
And look, in 2025 and in 2026, is everything from an AI standpoint going to be perfect? Absolutely not. Like, this is a 5 or 10 year mission at minimum, and we'll continue to innovate. But this idea that like agents are going to do everything in 2026 is just not plausible.
I like that.
Like, I am still very bullish, more so than any time, on the finance professional.
Yeah.
And so, and because of some of the other headwinds in talent, I actually think like many finance professionals are finally really feeling like the LeBron James and the NBA players like at the firm, which is great.
It is awesome.
I think the piece of advice I would give you is you do need to start leaning in, because you yourself will adapt your learning.
Yeah.
And until you actually start to use some of these tools that are not just using GPT and Anthropic, but actually using vertical applications within the accounting stack, you're not going to get the exposure, because to your point, these things compound. Like the minute you get in, like the sooner you get good at it in 2025, you're just going to be a lot better at it in 2030. And so our goal at Tabs is not to tell you to like change everything, but it's to start to get some of that exposure. And what you'll realize is it's, in some ways, you're starting to see the value, but it's not actually completely shifting like things that you do well.
Right.
It's more conducive to the things you just don't want to either be doing or the things you didn't have access to glean the insights to be a more compounding finance professional.
Yeah.
And so that's the piece I'd leave with today. Is
I love
like,
that.
I think it is a unique time. It's never a better time to be a consumer. The time to implement, adopt,
Right.
has become a lot more pragmatic than with your prior tools. So a lot of that scar tissue, like at least be curious right now and like, and build a relationship with at least 1 or 2 companies to start. Because I think 5 years from now, the stack, your team, et cetera, is going to look a lot differently. And you just don't want to be reactively adjusting to that in 2030.
Yeah, that's great. And what I love about that, just as we're like finishing, is instead of talking really to the company, the institution, to the department, it's to the individual.
Yes.
Right? Because that, at the end of the day, that is what we're trying to accomplish.
100%.
It's just, how do we get to that level where we are enhancing this person's life and being able to, instead of the time that you're mostly interacting with the head of the company as when, why didn't they get the report on time? Or can you go back and find out what happened with this number? It's, you're actually in the seat of, they can't wait to talk to you because of the insights that you have. And it's just like totally shifting the value around. So there's so much more joy out of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Instead of just like being, you know, viewed as to, have you gotten my product done on time?
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
Amazing.
This has been excellent. I'm like
Likewise.
enthused here.
100%.
Ready to hit the
times.
streets.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Ali. Thank you.